Welcome back, Coinology. The story of the 1981 1-cent coin begins long before the date stamped on its surface, because every copper-coated artifact of American history carries with it an entire universe of events, decisions, metal changes, and human hands that passed it from pocket to pocket. And in this script, the journey of the 1981 penny becomes a vibrant tale that stretches across decades and across countless collectors' tables, coin shops, auction houses, and the dreams of people who one day hoped that a small copper piece could change their financial destiny. As we start speaking about this coin, we imagine the moment when the presses at the United States Mint first struck the 1981 Lincoln cent, and the clinking sound echoed through the large industrial halls as brilliant uncirculated coins rolled down the conveyor belts and mint employees inspected the first fresh strikes for clarity, sharpness, and quality. But the fascinating part begins earlier, when the design itself was chosen long before the year 1981 arrived, because the Lincoln cent design originated in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, and over the years that design endured through wars, economic crashes, metal shortages, and evolving minting technology. And that is why the 1981 penny appears simple on the surface but actually reflects a massive legacy behind it, carrying the portrait of the 16th president who preserved the Union during the Civil War and whose profile became the most recognized design in American numismatics. And this portrait, sculpted by Victor David Brenner, became iconic with its facial details, the bow tie, the slope of Lincoln's coat, the fine hair texture, and the confident gaze toward the right. Each tiny stroke of the original engraver's art lives on in the 1981 strike, because the dies used were descendants of the same artistic model but sharpened and reworked by mint engravers to ensure clarity and brilliance. So when you hold a 1981 penny in your hands, you are holding more than copper and zinc. You are holding a miniature muse. Heavier weight gives a 1981 penny that satisfying metallic feel, a density and ringing tone that modern pennies lack. So when collectors talk about the value of the 1981 penny, they often refer to this transitional significance, the fact that the coin marks the end of one historical era and almost the beginning of a new monetary chapter. And this alone draws strong collector interest from around the world. In addition to its material history, the 1981 penny also carries symbolic weight, because the obverse features the word liberty to remind Americans of the ideals Lincoln fought for, and the motto "In God We Trust," which became a national statement engraved into American culture. And the reverse showcases the Lincoln Memorial, an architectural tribute to the president, completed in 1922 and chosen in 1959 as the image for the back of the penny. After replacing the classic wheat ears, the detailed pillars of the Lincoln Memorial can be seen under magnification, and in high-grade 1981 coins you can sometimes even see the tiny statue of seated Lincoln inside the memorial, appearing as a minuscule sculpture that most people never even notice but exists as one of the most extraordinary microscopic details on any US coin. And this incredible craftsmanship is one of the reasons why collectors treasure the series, because the artistry exceeds the face value by thousands of times. As people explore the penny market, they often ask, how can a 1-cent coin be worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars? And the answer lies in rarity, condition, mint errors, die varieties, and the story that surrounds each individual example of the coin. The 1981 penny, although minted in the hundreds of millions, has special variants that are extremely scarce, and these uncommon varieties, when preserved in high mint state grades like MS68 or MS69, can reach astronomical values at major coin auctions. Bidders from around the world gather in rooms filled with adrenaline, chasing after unbelievably rare pieces and trying to outbid each other to secure a coin that may never appear again for another decade or a lifetime. And that atmosphere of excitement leads to climbing prices, turning simple cents into life-changing monetary treasures. The 1981 penny has broken expectations many times, with certain near-perfect graded examples selling for extraordinary amounts and certain dramatic errors being chased aggressively by specialized collectors who know that the world of mint errors is a universe of its own. There are double dies, off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, wrong planchet errors, transitional metal errors, and die cracks, and some of these errors transform a routine penny into a unique masterpiece, because no two mint errors are perfectly identical. Each one represents an accidental work of art created by the mint machines during a moment of mechanical misalignment or pressure misfeed or die deterioration, and these anomalies occur only once, meaning that the 1981 penny with a rare error becomes a one-of-a-kind collectible, impossible to duplicate and highly desired by advanced error collectors. And auction houses highlight such pieces with dramatic photos, magnification shots, and detailed descriptions that trigger bidding wars among passionate buyers. And that is how rare 1981 pennies have crossed values worth tens of thousands or even more, leading to the extraordinary market estimate of coins valued at up to $123,900 or beyond under the right circumstances. And the story continues expanding as more collectors search through old rolls, inherited jars, dusty drawers, and bank boxes, hoping that one day they might find a treasure hiding in plain sight among ordinary cents. The narrative becomes even more powerful when we talk about the history behind the year itself, because 1981 was a moment of significant economic and political change in the United States, a year when inflation, policy debates, and financial restructuring influenced public perception of money, and the mint operations were adjusting to rising copper prices, which pushed the government closer to adopting the zinc planchets that would become standard the following year. So the 1981 penny represents not only the past of American currency but also the turning point when the material composition of the smallest denomination of US coins changed forever, and the decisions taken in those minting rooms reflected global commodity markets, industrial cost pressures, and the evolving needs of the financial system, making the 1981 penny a silent witness to the economic transitions of its era. And when collectors today handle one of these coins, they feel the weight not only of metal but of history, of the human stories linked to it, of the millions of people who carried these cents during 1981, unaware that decades later those same small coins might become subjects of massive bidding battles among numismatists and investors. Coins carry memories and sentiments. They circulate through families, travel in pockets through stores and across borders before eventually finding rest in a jar or collection album. And the 1981 penny has lived that journey countless times, and some examples miraculously survived for decades untouched, pristine, uncirculated, and resting in mint-sealed sets or rolls, waiting for someone in the future to rediscover them and recognize their true value, because collectors today know that condition is everything. And even the smallest scratch or dull surface can drop the value dramatically, but a perfectly preserved untouched piece with glowing copper luster and razor-sharp details can skyrocket in worth to unbelievable heights and become one of the most desired 1981 cents ever recorded. And as the script continues, the story of the coin only grows deeper, expanding into analysis of die varieties, subtle differences in mint mark shapes, the sharpness of the steps on the Lincoln Memorial, the color grading from brown to red, brown to full red, the way light reflects across the fields of the coin, and the microscopic details that specialists examine under high magnification, including die polish lines, metal flow lines, and strike pressure indicators, because every tiny characteristic contributes to the overall grade, and grade determines value. This is why a single 1981 penny can jump from a few cents in worn condition to thousands, or even tens of thousands in the highest possible grading range, especially when combined with rare die varieties or mint errors. And that is the beauty of coin collecting, the idea that something so small could contain so much potential value, history, artistry, and financial opportunity. The journey of the 1981 penny enters an even deeper layer when we begin exploring the environments in which these coins were stored after their minting, because the preservation conditions of copper coins create massive differences in long-term value. Copper is a reactive metal sensitive to humidity, temperature, oils from human skin, and even air quality, so a penny kept in a drawer exposed to moisture might darken, develop spots, and lose its brilliant luster, while another stored in an airtight roll inside a climate-controlled environment for 40 years could retain the same fiery red glow it had the day it left the coin press. And this is why the grading services pay such close attention to surface quality, because the difference between a red-brown coin and a full red coin can mean thousands of dollars in market value, especially for the 1981 series, where high-grade red coins are among the most visually stunning pieces. Collectors chase passionately the brilliance of a well-preserved red 1981 penny reflects light like a small sun spinning across the copper surface, revealing the classic swirling mint luster that only uncirculated coins display. And this luster is one of the biggest indicators of originality, because as coins circulate or even rub against other coins in a storage container, the delicate mint frost slowly disappears, leaving duller fields and less radiance. And this transformation matters enormously when a buyer looks for top-tier examples that could reach values equivalent to luxury items or rare artifacts. As the narrative moves forward, we imagine the journey from minting machines to the modern grading services that authenticate and encapsulate these coins into tamper-proof holders that preserve them for generations. Collectors in the modern era rely heavily on professional grading companies, because the difference between a coin graded MS66 and MS67, or the jump from MS67 to MS68, creates an exponential increase in value. And the reason is simple: the higher the grade, the rarer it becomes. High-end copper coins with minimal marks are incredibly scarce because copper scratches easily, and even freshly minted coins coming straight from the roll can show tiny contact marks from colliding with each other during bagging and transport processes. But once a specimen achieves a stunningly high grade, it enters the elite class of numismatics, where only a tiny population exists, sometimes only a few examples in the world, and these are the coins that enter auction rooms decorated with glass cases, velvet backgrounds, bright lights, and magnified photos that highlight every tiny detail, sending collectors into excitement as they prepare to bid on a coin that may not reappear on the market for decades. And this scarcity drives the extraordinary values, such as the rare 1981 cents that have been estimated or sold for extremely high prices near the six-figure mark, because rarity, condition, historical timing, and collector demand all merge into one powerful formula that can turn a 1-cent coin into a treasure worth more than a new car or a small house. The fascination with the 1981 penny also expands into the subtle mint mark variations created at the Denver and Philadelphia facilities. The 1981 D strikes often carry sharper details because of the minting equipment used at the Denver Mint, while Philadelphia strikes sometimes show minor differences in strike strength or die polish. These differences are small, but specialists notice everything because collectors love identifying characteristics that set one coin apart from another, and that search for uniqueness became even more intense when people discovered that certain 1981 pennies show small anomalies in the metal flow patterns around Lincoln's profile, die fatigue lines near the rim, or minute doubling effects on certain letters. And these tiny irregularities give collectors new reasons to examine every penny under magnification, hoping to uncover something rare, something unseen, something that could elevate the value dramatically. And the more people search, the more excitement builds, because pennies from the early 80s now sit at the crossroads between modern and vintage coinage, making them perfectly positioned for newfound discovery in the hobby. As examination technology improves every day with more powerful microscopes, better cameras, and digital tools that reveal details the naked eye never could see decades ago, and in this enormous world of copper coins, the passion of collectors becomes a powerful emotional story because many people first entered the hobby as children receiving pennies from their parents or grandparents. Sometimes someone inherited a jar filled with old coins not knowing that inside the jar a gem might be hiding, a 1981 penny struck with extraordinary sharpness or preserved in a coin set untouched for years waiting to be rediscovered. And when collectors find such pieces, the moment feels magical, almost surreal, as if time has opened a window and handed them a piece of history that traveled across generations untouched. And this emotional connection to objects that outlast people creates a strong bond between collectors and their coins, turning the act of finding a rare 1981 penny into a life-changing experience that carries both sentimental and financial meaning. As we continue exploring the history behind this year, we realize that the United States was undergoing cultural and economic shifts in 1981. Inflation fears, global conflicts, new governmental policies, and rising metal costs changed the way Americans viewed currency, and at the same time the mint was preparing for one of its biggest transitions ever, switching from copper to zinc the following year because copper became too expensive to maintain at high purity levels on millions of coins. The decision was debated for years. Research was conducted through experimental strikes and metallurgical testing before the final choice became official, and knowing that 1981 became the last full year of the original heavy copper cents adds a profound symbolic meaning to these coins. They become the final chapter of a long-standing tradition, a farewell to the classic copper composition that defined American pennies for generations, and collectors honor this moment by preserving red examples in slabs, albums, and display cases as relics of a rich monetary heritage. A deep dive into the technical minting process reveals even more detail about what makes specific 1981 pennies valuable. Because the planchets, the blank discs used to strike coins, required rigorous inspection before minting, and during certain years slight variations in the metal mixture could occur, resulting in small differences in color, texture, or strike response under the pressure of the coin press, and these differences become visible under magnification. Another fascinating aspect lies in the way the dies were replaced throughout the year. Dies naturally wear down, striking millions of coins, and as they degrade, they produce weaker strikes or softer details which are less desirable for collectors. But the earliest strikes from fresh dies, known as early die state coins, show razor-sharp details, crisp edges, strong relief, and extremely clean surfaces, and these are the coins that grading services love because their clarity elevates them above standard examples, making them more likely to achieve high grades and premium values. And throughout this entire narrative of metal artistry, historical significance, rarity, condition, and collector passion, the value trajectory of the 1981 penny grows more complex because the coin market is alive, constantly changing with new discoveries, new pricing trends, new demand waves, and new generations of collectors entering the hobby. The market value of a rare 1981 penny can fluctuate dramatically when a high-grade example hits the auction block and sells for an incredible price. The excitement spreads across the numismatic community, inspiring thousands of people to search their own collections hoping to find another example, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but the thrill remains strong, and this wave of interest fuels the possibility that some 1981 pennies could continue climbing in value, potentially reaching or even surpassing extraordinary figures such as $100,000 or more under very rare and specific conditions, especially for the absolute top-graded pieces with exceptional preservation or the legendary era varieties that appear maybe once in a generation. And this possibility keeps the 1981 penny alive as one of the most talked about coins in modern American numismatics. The story of the 1981 1-cent coin deepens further when we begin examining the psychological element behind why small coins like pennies can develop such extraordinary monetary value far beyond their face worth, and the explanation lies in a combination of rarity, obsession, human curiosity, and the desire to possess something that very few others will ever own. Because the moment a coin escapes the ordinary world of everyday circulation and enters the arena of rarity, it becomes an object of power. Not in the sense of physical strength, but in the sense of symbolic and emotional value. People do not collect rare coins because they need them for spending, they collect them because they represent history, achievement, beauty, and exclusivity. And the 1981 penny is no exception because it stands at a unique intersection of history, transitioning metals, and collectible fascination, offering everyone from beginners to elite collectors a chance to discover something extraordinary in a coin that once passed through countless hands unappreciated and unnoticed. As collectors dig deeper into the numismatic world, they begin learning about the hidden complexities of copper cents, because not all copper ages the same way and not all aging is considered damage. Certain natural toning patterns, for instance, can actually add value to a coin rather than reduce it, depending on the aesthetic appeal, the color combinations, and the evenness of the surface. Some 1981 pennies develop stunning rainbow tones with shades of deep violet, bright magenta, gold, turquoise, and fiery orange swirling across the surface like aurora patterns in miniature, and collectors often refer to these coins as toned beauties or color spectrum cents because the toning transforms a simple penny into something almost artistic, and when such toning appears naturally formed over decades under the right environmental conditions, the value can multiply, especially when the coin also retains sharp details, strong luster, and minimal marks. A perfectly toned 1981 penny in a high-grade slab can attract collectors who focus specifically on color rarity, making the coin even more desirable and valuable because every toned coin is unique like a fingerprint. No two coins develop the exact same pattern or intensity, and this individuality enhances the collectible appeal tremendously. Moving deeper into the technical aspects of grading, we encounter the world of microscopic detail evaluation, where specialists examine every inch of the coin under powerful magnification and bright directional lighting to determine the level of perfection. The slightest pin scratch, microscopic tick, fate rub, or tiny carbon spot can drop a high-grade coin from a potential 5-figure value to something far more modest, because at the highest levels of coin grading the standards become almost impossibly strict. Coins that appear flawless to the untrained eye often show tiny flaws under magnification that only specialists can identify, because copper coins, especially from the early 80s, are known to develop tiny imperfections even while sitting untouched for years, and this fragility adds to their rarity, because finding one that survived 4 decades without acquiring a single distracting mark is an extraordinary accomplishment, and this rarity explains how a seemingly ordinary 1981 penny could transform into a coin valued at astonishing amounts, perhaps one day surpassing the 6-figure threshold depending on grade, demand, rarity, and auction circumstances, and this potential excites collectors, fueling the ongoing search through rolls, jars, and boxes around the world. The mystique of the 1981 penny grows when we step into the world of mint errors, which often serve as the crown jewels of modern coin collecting, because while circulation and grading add value, mint errors create one-of-a-kind specimens that cannot be duplicated, and one of the most exciting types of errors for the 1981 penny includes off-center strikes, where the design shifts dramatically, leaving large blank crescent-shaped sections of metal while the portrait and lettering curve toward the rim. These visually striking errors can command high premiums, especially when the off-center percentage is large and the date remains visible. Another desirable error type includes double strikes, where the coin is struck twice by the dies, creating a dramatic shadow-like doubling effect across Lincoln's profile or the memorial reverse, and such mistakes demand attention because they show the mechanical unpredictability of the minting process, capturing a split-second malfunction and preserving it forever in metal form. One of the most dramatic errors involves wrong planchet strikes, where a 1981 penny is accidentally struck on a dime planchet or a foreign coin planchet, creating an extraordinary rarity that stands out instantly due to its smaller size, lighter weight, and incomplete design elements, and these error coins can sell for shockingly high amounts depending on rarity and demand, making the 1981 penny one of the most fascinating modern series to examine for minting mystiques. As we continue the journey, we begin to explore the human side of collecting, where individuals from all walks of life search for rare coins, each with a personal story. Some collectors began searching pennies decades ago as a childhood hobby, while others entered the world as adults after inheriting coin collections from relatives, and the sentimental value behind these coins often outweighs even the monetary worth, because coins connect families, generations, and memories. Someone may remember a grandparent handing them a jar of old pennies, telling them to search for the valuable ones, and decades later those same coins might become a cherished legacy representing love, history, and the passage of time. And in many cases, people find rare or valuable coins in the most unexpected places: inside old drawers, inside dusty jars, hidden in boxes, forgotten in storage units, or preserved inside mint sets someone once bought long ago without realizing their future value. And these discoveries fuel the passion behind coin collecting, because they demonstrate that valuable treasures can still be found by ordinary people, not just professionals or wealthy collectors. And the 1981 penny becomes a symbol of this hope, a reminder that even the smallest coin can carry extraordinary potential. The economic context of 1981 adds even more meaning to the coin, because the early 1980s were marked by high inflation, rising interest rates, and shifting economic policies shaping how Americans viewed money value and long-term financial stability. And during this period, copper prices were fluctuating significantly, pushing the mint toward finalizing the decision to change penny composition. And because of this, the 1981 penny became the last full-year representative of the iconic copper-based cent before the transition to zinc in 1982, marking a historical turning point in American currency composition. This makes the coin more than just a piece of metal. It becomes a marker of economic evolution and a tangible reminder of how the cost of raw materials influences the structure of national currency systems. And policymakers studied the copper market closely, analyzing production costs, long-term sustainability, and the environmental and economic impact of continuing to mint billions of pennies in pure copper. And the decision to phase out copper cents marked the end of an era, one that makes 1981 pennies particularly meaningful today, and this transitional significance continues to amplify their collectible value with each passing year. And the narrative becomes even more compelling when we explore the modern market dynamics surrounding 1981 pennies, where online marketplaces, auctions, collector forums, and certification databases all play a role in shaping the coin's evolving value. Collectors often check population reports from major grading companies to determine how many high grade examples exist, because scarcity is the ultimate driver of premium value. And when the population of top-graded 1981 pennies remains small, the demand grows even stronger as collectors attempt to complete registry sets which rank individuals based on the quality and rarity of the coins they own. And competing to have the best registry set becomes intense, pushing collectors to pay premium prices for the highest graded examples available. And this competition continues to lift the value of exceptional 1981 pennies, contributing to prices that can reach tens of thousands or more in certain cases. And this environment ensures that the market for these coins remains highly active, creating excitement around every new auction listing or newly discovered error variety. And the story only grows as more collectors join the hobby, appreciating the beauty, historical weight, and potential financial value captured in a coin as small as a 1-cent piece from 1981. The deeper we move into the world of the 1981 penny, the more we begin to understand that the story of this coin is not only about metal or design or minting, but about an entire culture of collecting that has evolved over more than a century. Because coin collecting is one of the oldest hobbies in human history, practiced by kings, emperors, scholars, and ordinary people who saw value in preserving pieces of metal. that carried the marks of civilizations, and in the case of the 1981 penny, the coin holds both modern appeal and historic continuity, bridging older generations of collectors with younger enthusiasts stepping into the hobby for the first time. The accessibility of penny collecting has always made it a gateway into numismatics, because even someone with very little money could start by simply searching change rolls or jars, and this accessibility turned millions of Americans into casual treasure hunters, unaware that a seemingly normal coin could be hiding extraordinary rarity beneath its simple copper surface. And this widespread participation adds to the magic, because any person anywhere could suddenly stumble across a rare error or an exceptionally preserved piece worth far more than anyone would expect from a simple 1-cent coin. As we look closely at the design of the 1981 penny, we begin appreciating the subtle artistic choices that millions of people overlook every day, because the portrait of Abraham Lincoln remains one of the most iconic images not just in American coinage but in global currency design. The sculptor Victor David Brenner originally created the portrait in 1909, and his initials VDB became famous though controversial when they first appeared on the coin, leading to their temporary removal before eventually being restored in a smaller, more discreet location near Lincoln's shoulder. And by 1981 the design had been refined through decades of die adjustments, metal studies and engraving modifications, but it still preserved the essential features of Brenner's original artistry: Lincoln's thoughtful gaze slightly downward, symbolizing contemplation, the fine texture of the beard, the structure of the cheekbones, the separation of the coat lapel and the bow tie, all crafted with incredible attention to detail by engravers working with tools far less advanced than today's technological capabilities. And the reverse design featuring the Lincoln Memorial remains equally meaningful, because it symbolizes national unity, resilience and the honoring of a president who preserved the Union during the nation's most difficult chapter. And in well-struck 1981 examples, collectors can sometimes see impressive clarity in the tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, a microscopic feature that demonstrates the remarkable precision of the minting technology of that era. And this microscopic statue engraved into such a small coin becomes a symbol of American craftsmanship, representing the blending of artistic vision and mechanical engineering into a single iconic design. The significance of the 1981 penny grows further when examining its place in the timeline of material changes, because the coin sits right on the edge of the copper to zinc transition that occurred in 1982, and this transition was not merely a financial decision but a reflection of global economics. Copper prices rose dramatically through the 1970s and early 1980s, putting pressure on government budgets because producing a penny in nearly pure copper was becoming more expensive than the face value of the coin itself, and this imbalance made it unsustainable for the mint to continue with the long-standing copper composition. So engineers and metallurgists spent years developing the copper-plated zinc planchet that would replace the traditional copper alloy, and during these years of research experiments were conducted that included test strikes, prototype coins and evaluation of strike quality, durability and cost efficiency before the major shift occurred. And knowing this background reveals why the 1981 penny represents such an important piece of monetary history, because it reflects the final moments of an era when pennies were heavy, vibrant and rich with copper, a quality many collectors feel nostalgic about today. And this nostalgia contributes to the rising popularity of 1981 cents. As time continues to move farther away from the original copper eras, we move deeper into the experience of collectors. We witness the excitement of searching through coin rolls purchased from banks or obtained from collector groups, because millions of people participate in roll hunting with the hope of discovering rare dates, mint marks or errors among the ordinary coins. And for many hobbyists the thrill of the hunt becomes an addictive joy, spending hours examining each coin under desk lamps, using magnifiers or loupes, searching for something special. And among these searches the 1981 pennies always draw attention, because collectors know that while most examples are common, the possibility remains that a rare, high-grade or error piece could be hiding among them, and this mixture of possibility and rarity creates a powerful emotional drive behind the coin collecting hobby, because each roll becomes a mystery waiting to be solved and every coin becomes a potential treasure waiting to be discovered. And the satisfying feeling of finding a sharply struck red 1981 penny or spotting an unusual error by accident creates moments of excitement that collectors remember for years. Another extraordinary dimension of the 1981 penny story involves the technological evolution of coin authentication and grading, because decades ago collectors relied mostly on personal knowledge, visual judgment and experience to identify valuable coins, but today advanced grading services use microscopes, imaging technology, metal analysis and ultra-precise evaluation standards to determine the grade and authenticity of coins. And once a 1981 penny is graded by a major service, it is encapsulated in a hardened plastic case that seals the coin within a protective environment, ensuring that its condition will remain stable for decades or even centuries. And this preservation system ensures that future generations can appreciate the coin exactly as it appears today, without worrying about environmental damage, surface contact or chemical changes that could reduce its value. And the encapsulated coin then enters online databases that record population statistics, revealing how many coins exist at each grade level, a crucial element in determining rarity, because if a particular 1981 penny receives a very high grade and only a small number of examples share that grade, the value of the coin increases dramatically. And these population reports fuel competitive collecting through registry sets, where collectors compete globally to assemble the highest ranked sets of specific coin series, elevating demand and pushing rare coins to extraordinary price levels. The Emotional aspect of owning a rare 1981 penny also becomes a powerful storyline because when someone holds a coin worth tens of thousands of dollars, the experience is surreal. The coin feels surprisingly light for its value yet heavy with meaning because it represents history, rarity, and an extraordinary stroke of luck or dedication depending on how the owner obtained it, and some collectors spend decades searching for the perfect example while others discover one unexpectedly in a forgotten roll or collection, and these moments become powerful personal stories passed down to family and friends, stories that inspire future collectors and preserve the legacy of the hobby. And this human connection is part of what drives the continuing growth of interest in the 1981 penny because it symbolizes hope, the hope that something small can be incredibly valuable and something ordinary can become extraordinary through a combination of history, condition, and rarity. The market for 1981 pennies continues to expand as new collectors join the hobby and seasoned experts uncover new varieties and error classifications every year, because even though the coins were minted more than 4 decades ago, the study of them is ongoing. Discoveries continue, education increases, and technology progresses, opening new possibilities for identifying rare features previously overlooked. And this living, evolving nature of numismatics ensures that the 1981 penny will remain relevant for decades to come, especially as collectors continue searching for high-grade red specimens and dramatic mint errors that can elevate market values to new heights. The stories that develop around exceptional finds create momentum, excitement, and anticipation, and this continuous cycle of discovery reinforces the possibility that extraordinary values such as $100,000 or more remain within reach for the rarest and most pristine examples, pushing collectors to never stop searching and to never underestimate even the smallest coin. The deeper we travel into the world of the 1981 penny, the more it becomes clear that this coin is not just a piece of metal but a living witness to the evolution of American currency, technology, craftsmanship, and collector psychology. And as time moves forward, the appreciation for these copper cents only increases because newer generations of collectors recognize that coins from the early 1980s now occupy a special zone in numismatic history, no longer modern yet not fully considered old. They exist in a transitional category that becomes more desirable every year, and this transitional appeal adds emotional and financial value because collectors love coins that represent the end of an era, and the 1981 penny precisely marks that boundary line between the classic heavy copper cents and the lightweight zinc cents that define modern circulation today. And every time someone holds a bright red lustrous 1981 penny, they feel the weight of the real copper, the density, the richness, the warmth that modern pennies simply do not have, and this tactile difference becomes a powerful nostalgic trigger, drawing people back to memories of childhood when pennies were heavier, fuller, brighter, and felt more substantial in the hand. As the narrative expands, we begin exploring the subtle shifts that occurred in die production during the year 1981 because the mint was constantly refining its engraving processes, adjusting the relief levels and polishing the dies to maintain quality as the dies repeatedly struck millions of planchets, and these small technical adjustments sometimes resulted in minor differences that modern specialists study with great care. For example, some 1981 pennies show slightly bolder letters, others show softer memorial pillars or different spacing variations on the date or mint mark, and while these differences may appear insignificant to the average person, they matter deeply to specialists because small die characteristics help identify specific die pairs and die states, which in turn help classify varieties within the series. And collectors dedicated to die variety exploration spend countless hours comparing coins under high magnification, mapping out tiny details that form a complex catalog of variations, enriching the knowledge base around the 1981 issue. And these detailed studies contribute to growing excitement in the collector community because every new discovery adds potential value and fuels interest among specialists and casual collectors. As we move further into the collecting environment of the 1981 penny, we must consider how coin shows, conventions, and trading events play a crucial role in shaping the market, because these events gather thousands of collectors, dealers, investors, and experts under one roof, creating an electric atmosphere of negotiation, discovery, and competition. People walk through rows of display cases filled with shimmering coins, each one carefully arranged in protective holders under bright lights that enhance their natural brilliance. And among these cases, collectors often find high-grade copper cents, including exceptional 1981 pennies sitting next to older classics and modern rarities. The experience of seeing these coins in person, captivated behind glass with labels showing their grades and population numbers, creates a profound emotional reaction. The sense that these objects are not just collectibles but living pieces of history preserved through decades with incredible care, and dealers share stories about how rare examples were found, how they were preserved, how long they searched for them, or how fierce bidding was when they last appeared at auction. And these stories add a human dimension, making each coin more than just metal but a narrative filled with effort, passion, and chance. As the world continues evolving, technology shapes modern collecting trends in ways earlier generations never imagined. Today, collectors have access to digital magnification software, online grading resources, high-resolution imaging, and worldwide auction archives, allowing them to compare their 1981 pennies with top-graded examples from anywhere in the world. And this technological advantage has increased awareness about details to such an extent that modern collectors are far more educated than collectors from decades past. And this deeper understanding pushes demand for high-quality coins even higher, because people can clearly see what makes one coin more valuable than another, whether it's deeper Strike definition cleaner fields are intensely glowing luster, and with knowledge comes competition. Collectors now compete on a global scale, something that was not possible before the digital era, and because of this the rarest 1981 pennies increasingly appear in bidding competitions among collectors located in multiple countries, raising prices and pushing the value ceiling higher every year. The scientific and metallurgical side of the 1981 penny is another dimension worth exploring because copper behaves in complex ways over time, and understanding how it ages reveals fascinating insights into why certain coins remain pristine while others degrade. Copper reacts with oxygen, moisture, and environmental particles, resulting in oxidation patterns that can either enhance or reduce the aesthetic appeal of the coin. For instance, copper stored in dry environments may retain its original red color for decades, appearing almost freshly minted, while copper exposed to open air, humidity, or oils from human skin may gradually darken to a brown tone or develop spotting, and the science behind these reactions becomes critical when examining the long-term survival of 1981 pennies, because coins that avoided these natural processes become exponentially rarer as time passes, and the rarity created by environmental preservation strengthens the coin's value significantly after more than 40 years of exposure to shifts in temperature, humidity, and human handling. The number of truly pristine red 1981 pennies has shrunk dramatically, and this shrinking population combined with growing demand in the collector community creates the ideal scenario for increasing value, sustained interest, and long-term relevancy. As we explore the emotional landscape of collectors, we uncover how deeply people connect with coins on a personal level, because coins often represent memories, milestones, and nostalgia. For many people, the first time they found a shiny 1981 penny and change, perhaps as a child buying candy or toys, becomes a memory they associate with simpler times, and when collectors revisit these coins decades later, the nostalgia becomes powerful, driving them to preserve and collect these small pieces of childhood. And for many others, the memories come from parents or grandparents who kept jars of coins, teaching them how to search for rare dates or explaining the history behind certain pieces, and those family memories become emotional heritage, turning the 1981 penny into something greater than its physical composition, something that ties people to their past. And as generations pass, the emotional connection spreads through families, making certain coins meaningful heirlooms passed from one generation to the next. And as more people form emotional bonds with coins like the 1981 penny, the demand increases, the significance heightens, and the stories deepen, contributing to the coin's growing value in both sentimental and monetary terms. The modern market for 1981 pennies also reflects broader economic patterns, because collectibles have become recognized as alternative investment assets similar to art, jewelry, or vintage cars. And as inflation fluctuates and global markets shift, people seek stable, tangible assets to preserve value, and rare coins, especially high-grade examples of transitional year issues like the 1981 penny, appeal strongly to investors looking for long-term growth potential, because these coins possess qualities that investors understand: rarity, finite supply, historical relevance, and a strong collector base. And as more investors join the numismatic world, prices rise, competition intensifies, and values continue climbing across high-end markets, pushing rare 1981 pennies into increasingly prestigious territory. And this investment trend continues to expand as financial analysts begin acknowledging rare coins as unique hard assets that hold long-term value, making the 1981 penny a fascinating case study in how a small denomination coin can evolve into a sought-after investment piece. Over to me as the narrative moves forward, another fascinating dimension emerges involving the global interest in American coinage, because collectors from around the world pursue United States coins with enormous enthusiasm, attracted by the history, artistry, and global influence of American culture. And coins like the 1981 penny become popular not only in the United States but internationally, with collectors in Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa searching for high-grade or rare variety examples for their collections. And this international demand expands the market far beyond the borders of the United States, allowing rare coins to reach higher price levels than ever before, because more buyers from more countries compete for the same limited supply of pristine copper cents. And this global expansion ensures that coins like the 1981 penny will remain valuable long into the future, because the collector base is no longer limited to one country but spreads across continents, creating continuous and sustainable demand. And as we move even deeper into the vast and fascinating world of the 1981 1-cent coin, the story begins to stretch beyond just metal, mint marks, and historical transitions. It extends into the personal memories, collector psychology, and the emotional connection that people often form with simple coins that seem ordinary at first glance but carry exceptional meaning once you understand the circumstances surrounding them. Many collectors describe that their journey toward appreciating coins like the 1981 cent began not with a conscious ambition, but with the simple action of opening an old drawer or discovering a jar of pennies saved by a parent or grandparent, and this small moment becomes the spark that leads into a lifetime of fascination. The 1981 penny in particular has a strange way of calling people toward deeper research, because it sits at the crossroads of a major shift in U.S. coinage history, and even though the outward design doesn't scream rarity, the underlying minting story does. Collectors from around the world, whether in the United States, Pakistan, India, the UK, or Canada, often share similar stories. They encounter a few pennies from the 1970s or 1980s, they see dates like 1980, 1981, 1982, and begin to wonder why some of these years get so much attention. This curiosity is amplified when they see online headlines claiming that pennies worth only 1 cent can suddenly fetch tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in auction houses. And from there starts the chain reaction. People begin weighing pennies, inspecting mint marks, studying the design under microscopes, comparing surfaces and edges, and before they know it, they are fully immersed in the world of numismatics. The 1981 penny becomes an anchor point because it is one of the last true copper cents minted in the United States, and in the collector world, anything that marks the last of an era automatically gains significance. Not only does the 1981 cent represent the end of a composition era, but it also holds a powerful connection to American culture during that time. The early 1980s were a transition period in the U.S. economy, marked by inflation, recession, rising costs of raw materials, and major shifts in consumer spending. Copper had become so expensive that the U.S. Mint could no longer justify producing billions of coins using a metal that cost more to manufacture than the coin's assigned value. Economists, policymakers, and mint officials engaged in long debates about how the penny should evolve, whether it should remain in circulation, and what metal composition could offer the best balance of durability, affordability, and tradition. The discussions surrounding these decisions weren't simply financial, they involved national pride, the legacy of Abraham Lincoln, long-standing public opinion, and the sentimental value people attached to a coin that had existed for generations. When you understand that backdrop, suddenly the 1981 penny begins to take on a more powerful meaning. It becomes a symbol of an era of economic tension but also resilience. It represents the final stretch of the original copper coinage tradition that began all the way back in 1909 with the first Lincoln cent. For collectors, this isn't merely a coin, it is a preserved piece of national history captured in the smallest denomination of U.S. currency. And because of this emotional and historical depth, high-quality 1981 copper cents have experienced a surge in collector demand. This has contributed to dramatic increases in market value for extremely rare, high-grade examples, with some specimens, especially those graded MS67, MS68, and certain proof strikes, being valued in six-figure price ranges, even reaching the extraordinary estimate of $123,900 million for the most perfect and unique examples under the right conditions of rarity and demand. But to appreciate why such high values can be assigned, we must explore how rare true perfection is in the world of coin grading. The grading process for a penny is far more detailed than most people realize. A coin that appears nearly flawless to the naked eye may reveal countless microscopic imperfections when examined under the precise, high-magnification equipment used by official grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Company. A tiny scratch, a small spot of discoloration, a slight weakness in strike, or a barely visible dent can drastically pull down the grade and therefore reduce the market value significantly. Achieving a high grade such as MS68 is almost like winning the lottery, not because the coin is impossible to find but because the conditions required to keep it perfectly preserved over decades are nearly impossible for ordinary circumstances. Imagine a coin minted in 1981, released into circulation, passing through pockets, cash registers, wallets, jars, and counters. Over the years, it gets thrown into piggy banks, dropped onto hard surfaces, rubbed against other coins, exposed to humidity, heat, sweat, oil, dirt, and constant friction. The mere act of being transported from one city to another introduces potential scratches. Even storing a coin in a jar with other coins can create enough friction to ruin its potential for a high grade. And that is why coins that survive more than 40 years with no marks, no surface damage, no environmental tarnish, and no metal corrosion are exceptionally rare. These are the coins that command premium prices. Collectors often focus on the tiny differences that distinguish one 1981 cent from another, and even though these differences might seem insignificant to the casual observer, they are crucial from a numismatic perspective. Surface luster, for example, plays a key role in determining how light reflects across the coin's surface. A coin with original mint luster indicates that it hasn't been circulated, it still carries the same sheen it had the moment it left the mint presses. This luster can be frosty, satiny, or brilliant depending on the specific dye used and the minting pressure applied. Some collectors prefer deeply frosted surfaces while others prefer brilliant, mirror-like fields. These aesthetic preferences also influence the final auction prices. Another essential factor is strike sharpness. When a coin is struck with full force using fresh dies, the resulting details are crisp and deeply defined. On a 1981 penny, this includes Lincoln's hair strands, the sharpness around the jawline, the clarity of the Liberty inscription, the distinct contour of the 1981 date, and the boldness of the mint mark. On the reverse side, the steps, columns, and architectural symmetry of the Lincoln Memorial are also assessed. A full strike example that displays every detail with perfection is significantly more valuable than a weakly struck one. This is why some 1981 pennies, despite being the same metal composition and minted in the same year, hold drastically different values. As we dive further into the psychology of collectors chasing rare diamonds hidden among billions of coins, we discover that many people enjoy the thrill of searching through rolls of coins purchased from banks or coin dealers. This process is known as coin roll hunting, and for many hobbyists, it becomes a relaxing yet exciting pastime. They purchase boxes of pennies, sometimes containing 2,500 coins, and search through every single one with a magnifying glass, hoping to find even a single copper 1981 cent with extraordinary potential. The idea that a 1-cent coin could be worth thousands or even millions in perfect condition makes the hunt feel like a treasure expedition. And the 1981 penny is a popular target because it still appears frequently in circulation, even though high-quality examples are rare. But what truly fuels the demand is the cultural and generational nostalgia associated with Lincoln pennies. For many Americans, pennies were part of childhood, saving them, counting them, stacking them, rolling them for allowance. People He Lincoln Memorial on the reverse carries deep architectural and political meaning. To own a perfect or near-perfect copper cent from 1981 is to own a piece of American cultural identity, and this global demand pushes the value even higher. And now, when we explore the market value of the highest value 1981 cents, those extraordinary examples that reach near mythical numbers like $123,900 million, we must understand that these values are based on a combination of rarity, grading, demand, and historical significance. These are not ordinary coins but the absolute finest survivors known to exist. They may come from sealed mint rolls that were never opened, or from proof sets that were stored carefully for decades, or they may originate from private collections where they were preserved in pristine, climate-controlled environments. And as the story of the 1981 1-cent coin grows, it becomes clearer that the deeper we analyze this small and often overlooked piece of American currency, the more layers begin to unfold, because a coin is never just a coin, it is a silent witness to time, a tiny metallic diary holding the fingerprints of history, society, economy, and human behavior. When we think about the 1981 penny, we aren't merely discussing copper and zinc or mint marks like P, D, and S, we're exploring an entire era frozen in metal, preserved across decades, passed from one generation to the next with stories attached to it, stories people didn't even realize they were carrying. And this unique historical weight is one of the major reasons why collectors across the world become increasingly fascinated by coins that seem common on the surface but hold extraordinary value beneath it. Every collector, whether they're beginners who have just started observing their change more carefully or seasoned numismatists who've spent their entire lives studying the smallest details on coins, understands that the 1981 cent holds a special place in coin history. It represents the end of a metal composition that had been in use for nearly a century, and whenever something marks the closing chapter of a long historical period, it naturally gains significance. Think of it like the final issue of a popular magazine, the last edition of a classic car model, or the final run of a vintage product. Those specific versions become unexpectedly valuable because they represent the end of an era. For the 1981 penny, this sense of finality elevates its status to something far beyond its face value. Even though millions of these coins were minted in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, the difference between an average circulated penny and a rare high-grade gem is enormous. Collectors know that while billions exist, only a microscopic fraction have been preserved in pristine condition. The world has a funny way of letting most coins live a tough life, being mishandled, tossed in pockets, scraped against other coins, and exposed to moisture, dust, oils, and constant friction. Most pennies have endured rough journeys filled with scratches, spots, discoloration, and tiny imperfections. It is precisely this harsh reality that makes the perfect survivors so astonishing, almost unbelievable, because how does a coin minted more than 40 years ago escape all the damage life usually brings? And this is where human stories intertwine with coin stories. Many pristine 1981 cents come from unexpected places: sealed bankrolls kept in dusty drawers, untouched proof sets stored in closets, forgotten coin jars that belonged to grandparents, and even old cash registers that were never emptied. Some families discover coins like these after decades, realizing they had unknowingly protected a treasure without intention. It makes the entire idea of coin collecting feel magical, as though the past tucked away small gifts for the future to discover. These discoveries fuel the dream for collectors everywhere, inspiring them to keep searching, to keep hunting through rolls, to keep examining old jars, hoping that one day they might find that perfectly preserved piece worth thousands, or in the rarest cases, over $100 million. But beyond the excitement, we must also understand that the intense value assigned to these coins comes from the grading system, a system so rigorous that even the smallest flaw can drastically change a penny's worth. Imagine a grader examining a coin under magnification, looking for the tiniest traces of weakness or wear. If Lincoln's cheek has a barely visible contact mark, if the fields have even the slightest haze, if the luster isn't perfectly even, the grade will drop. And with that drop, the value can fall from thousands to mere cents. This razor-thin line between perfection and imperfection creates a thrilling tension that collectors chase. It turns the hunt into a puzzle, a test of patience, and a celebration of sharp observation. This difficulty in achieving high grades explains why a perfect or near-perfect 1981 penny can reach astronomical values. When a coin attains a grade like MS68 or MS69, the highest levels possible for business strikes, it becomes a once-in-a-generation piece. Auction houses compete fiercely for the chance to sell such specimens, and bidders from all over the world join in, driving the final price into the stratosphere. It creates a moment where a tiny coin, once exchanged casually for candy or gum, becomes a star in the spotlight worth more than many luxury cars, houses, or even entire collections. At the core of this massive demand lies the beauty of the coin itself. There is something aesthetically pleasing about the design of the 1981 cent, the sharp portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right, the bold inscription "I in God We Trust" framing the top edge, the powerful simplicity of the word liberty positioned near Lincoln's shoulder, and the precise date 1981 placed clearly beneath the portrait. On well-struck examples, every detail of Lincoln's hair, beard, and clothing appears sharp and lifelike. Each curve of the lettering looks crisp, reflective, and perfectly balanced. These subtle details are what give the 1981 copper cents their strong visual appeal, especially when they've never entered circulation and retain their original mint luster. And then there's the reverse design, the iconic Lincoln Memorial, a structure that embodies American history, symbolism, and architectural grandeur. The reverse of the 1981 penny doesn't just depict a building, it carries the emotional weight of the nation's collective memory, honoring a president whose leadership shaped the course of U.S. history. In perfectly struck examples, you can see the individual columns, the interior structure, the stairs, the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, and even the fine engraving lines that bring the monument to life. Every collector, whether dedicated or casual, admires the reverse because it reflects both artistic craftsmanship and national identity. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of the 1981 cent's growing value is the way modern collectors perceive copper pennies. Copper, once a standard metal in coinage, has now become a nostalgic memory. As newer generations grow up surrounded by zinc pennies that lack the weight, feel, and tone of copper, the older copper cents become increasingly desirable. People develop sentimental attachments to things that remind them of their childhood or their past, and copper pennies often evoke memories of simpler times, helping parents count change, filling piggy banks, buying small treats, or learning math in school. These emotional connections amplify the demand for copper cents across all ages. Additionally, investors see copper pennies as a form of metal wealth because the copper content alone in pennies made before 1982 is higher than their face value. While melting them is illegal, owning them for future potential is perfectly fine. For that reason, many people hoard copper pennies in buckets, bags, and boxes, hoping that one day the laws might change or the metal value might rise even more. This reduces the number of copper cents in circulation, making pristine 1981 examples even harder to find. Collectors also love studying the variations within the year 1981. There are subtle differences in die quality, strike strength, mint mark styles, and surface textures that can cause small premiums. The 1981's proof coins have deep cameo and ultra cameo varieties, and these flawless specimens are among the most visually stunning coins ever produced. When a coin displays perfect frosted devices and mirror-like fields, the contrast becomes breathtaking and dramatically increases its desirability. Proof coins stored properly often maintain their brilliance for decades, making them excellent candidates for top-tier grades. Some of these examples have been sold at premium prices, especially when certified by PCGS or NGC with labels indicating their exceptional quality. But the part that captivates people the most is the idea that hidden somewhere in the world, maybe in a forgotten roll, a sealed box, or a private collection that has not yet been examined, could be a pristine 1981 cent capable of breaking auction records. This sense of possibility keeps the excitement alive. It fuels the global search, encourages people to revisit their old collections, makes them look closer at coins they once ignored, and inspires them to explore the fascinating world of numismatics with renewed enthusiasm. Many people don't realize that the most valuable coins in the world often appear unexpectedly in the hands of regular individuals. A coin that sells for millions at auction could have been sitting unnoticed in a personal drawer for decades. This unpredictability gives collectors hope and makes the 1981 penny a particularly thrilling piece to examine. And moving even deeper into the endless universe that surrounds the 1981 1-cent coin, the story begins to stretch into territories that most people never consider when they look at a penny. Because on the surface, it may look like an ordinary copper disc with a familiar portrait and a date that blends effortlessly into the background of American pocket change, but once you peel back the layers of time, economics, culture, and human emotion, the 1981 cent reveals itself as a small but powerful artifact that connects millions of people across decades. Every time we explore it further, new threads appear that weave into a larger narrative, and the more we understand these threads, the more extraordinary this coin becomes. Collectors often describe the 1981 penny as a gateway and entry point into the world of numismatics, and this is because the year sits at a delicate turning point in history. It is the moment just before everything changed, right before copper coins disappeared forever from mass production. And because people often feel a deep emotional connection to the last of something, the 1981 cent has become increasingly symbolic, a reminder of the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one. You could argue that the penny itself became a visual metaphor for how the world transitions, how societies adapt to rising costs and changing resources, and how even the smallest currency denomination carries the weight of national decisions. When collectors and historians discuss this coin, they speak about it not only in terms of rarity and value but in the context of what it represents socially and culturally. The early 1980s were years marked by shifting economic landscapes, where inflation and rising metal prices forced governments to reconsider long-standing traditions. Copper had become more expensive, global markets were unstable, and the cost of producing a penny exceeded its worth. This simple economic pressure pushed the United States Mint into redesigning its approach to coinage, proving that even the smallest denomination could trigger major debates about national policy. As people realized these changes were inevitable, they became increasingly attached to the coins that were about to vanish from production. This emotional attachment is one of the strongest forces driving the value of copper pennies today. Collectors and regular people alike find themselves drawn to older coins because they feel heavier, sturdier, more authentic. The older generations remember them vividly, while the younger generations discover them with fascination, noting that they feel different in the hand, warmer, more substantial, more meaningful. It's remarkable how something so small can evoke such powerful feelings, but that is the magic of coins. They sit quietly in our palms yet hold the memories of millions. This feeling is amplified when one examines a pristine 1981 penny, untouched by circulation. A coin that has survived 40 years without scratches, fingerprints, environmental damage, or metal decay carries an energy of preservation that feels almost miraculous. It becomes more than currency, it becomes a time capsule. Such coins often tell stories of careful storage, forgotten boxes, sealed rolls, and meticulous collectors who valued protection above all else. And when one of these coins surfaces at auction, the bidding war reflects the public's desire to hold on to a piece of the past, because while billions of 1981 cents were minted, nearly all of them have suffered through decades of use and wear. Only a microscopic fraction survived in gem condition. And this rarity explains why certain examples have reached valuations equal to cars, homes, salaries, or even fortunes, some reaching the imaginative heights of $123,900 million in perfect theoretical grading circumstances. This is not because the metal is worth that much or because the coin has magical properties, but because perfection is one of the rarest qualities in the universe. A flawless coin represents the ultimate convergence of time, preservation, and luck. When a 1981 penny earns a grade like MS-68 or even the nearly impossible MS-69, it stands at the absolute pinnacle of quality. And collectors, investors, museums, and auction houses understand this, so they chase these coins with extraordinary passion. The moment such a coin appears on the market, it triggers excitement across the numismatic community. Online forums buzz with speculation, experts analyze images frame by frame, investors prepare their bids, and ordinary people watch with amazement as a 1-cent coin surpasses amounts they never imagined possible. But the story doesn't end with grading or auctions. There is also the mystery of what might still be hidden out there. Many seasoned collectors firmly believe that somewhere, maybe in a sealed roll inside a forgotten storage unit, or in a bank vault untouched since the early 1980s, or in a deceased collector's estate, there lies a flawless 1981 cent, better than any ever discovered, capable of breaking every record set before. And because nobody knows where this perfect example might appear, the suspense remains alive, keeping collectors motivated to continue searching, examining, analyzing, and learning. You can picture someone opening an old drawer in a dusty attic, discovering a small paper-wrapped roll of pennies with the words 1981 scribbled faintly on the edge. Maybe it was saved by a grandparent who thought it might one day be important. Maybe it was forgotten by a parent who collected coins casually but never pursued grading. And maybe, inside that roll, untouched for 4 decades, lies a coin so perfect that it captures the imagination of the entire coin world. This possibility energizes collectors, driving them to search bankrolls, estate sales, flea markets, and private collections. Every find carries the thrill of what if, and this thrill transforms an ordinary hobby into a lifelong passion. Another fascinating aspect is how international collectors perceive the 1981 penny. For people outside the United States, American currency often holds a legendary status. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln is instantly recognizable across continents, and the Lincoln Memorial is a global symbol. Collectors from Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and beyond often express admiration for the design and history of the penny, elevating its international demand. This global appeal boosts the value of high-end specimens even further, as competition increases and collectors from different countries place ambitious bids to secure these coins, and when you take a closer look at the design itself, the artistic beauty becomes undeniable. Lincoln's profile has a depth and realism that gives the coin character. The way the light reflects across his cheek, the engraved texture of his hair, the fine lines of his beard, all captured with remarkable precision, make the coin feel like the reverse further enhances this beauty. The Lincoln Memorial, though widely seen in real life, takes on a new form of elegance when translated into the crisp geometry of coin engraving. A well-preserved 1981 cent displays the columns with razor-sharp lines, the inner statue of Lincoln faint yet distinct, the horizontal steps clear, and the architecture symmetrical. These details matter because they demonstrate the craftsmanship of the mint engravers and the precision of the dies used during production. It's no wonder that collectors regard the 1981 cent as a miniature masterpiece, but beyond the artistry and rarity lies a deeper truth. This coin reminds us of how important it is to preserve history, even in the smallest forms. Every penny minted before 1982 represents a piece of America's past, a chapter of its economic struggles, a symbol of its evolving identity. The world has changed dramatically since the early 1980s. Technology, culture, politics, and daily life have all shifted, but coins like the 1981 cent remain unchanged, acting as stable anchors in a sea of transformation. They remind us where the country has been, how people lived, and how even the smallest symbols can carry extraordinary meaning, and this is why collectors across the globe continue to treasure copper pennies, especially those from transitional years like 1981. They aren't simply buying coins, they're acquiring fragments of time, artifacts of memory, relics of identity, and pieces of artistry that will outlive generations. Every high-grade 1981 cent that enters a collection becomes part of a legacy that may be passed down for decades or even centuries. The future may bring new technologies, new currencies, and new forms of wealth, but these small copper discs will remain powerful reminders of the past. And as the journey of exploring the 1981 1-cent coin continues unfolding like a never-ending river of history and mystery, the deeper meaning of this tiny copper artifact becomes even more pronounced, as if each new detail reveals not just facts about a coin, but truths about time, people, and the quiet ways in which the past leaves its fingerprints on the present. Because somewhere between the minting presses of 1981 and the hands that hold these coins today lies a story so expansive, so unexpectedly profound, that even collectors who have studied coins for decades often find themselves surprised by the emotional depth contained in such a small, simple object. And the more you think about the 1981 cent, the more you realize that what makes it valuable is not just rarity or metal or grade, it's what it represents in the long arc of human experience. When you imagine the year 1981, you can picture a world both familiar and distant. It was a year when technology was evolving but not yet dominating, when people still carried coins and bills everywhere, when pocket change mattered, and when the American economy was shifting in ways that would shape generations to come. Parents gave children pennies for treats, cashiers handed out change by the handful, and coins went through thousands of hands long before ever being noticed, collected, or preserved. Millions of 1981 pennies lived these ordinary lives, rolling across counters, clinking in glass jars, rattling in pockets, tucked into coin trays in old cars, dropped between couch cushions, or saved absent-mindedly in little piles next to telephones. These moments give each coin its own invisible biography, a small trace of humanity engraved into its journey, and amid the billions of these coins that have faded into circulation, worn down by time, there exist the rare survivors, the untouched gems that somehow evaded the chaos of everyday use. When collectors hold one of these pristine examples, it feels almost magical, as though they're touching a moment frozen in time. A coin like this never brushed against another surface, never rubbed against other coins, never endured sunlight or humidity or friction. It remained shielded, protected, preserved in a state of perfect beauty for decades. These flawless pieces are the ones that eventually rise to astonishing values, reaching heights no one in 1981 could have imagined. The idea that one of these coins can achieve a valuation of $123,900 million in the most extraordinary conditions adds a sense of mythic wonder to the hobby, turning humble pennies into symbols of possibility, but behind this possibility lies the meticulous science of coin grading. Imagine a specialist at PCGS or NGC sitting at a desk, examining the 1981 cent under powerful lighting and magnification. They turn the coin slowly, allowing the light to dance across the surface, searching for any imperfection, tiny scratches, faint rubs, subtle marks, specks, or imperfections invisible to the naked eye. They analyze the luster, checking whether it flows evenly in a radiant cartwheel effect. They examine the sharpness of every design detail: Lincoln's hair, jawline, coat, the lettering, the date, the mint mark, the smoothness of the fields, the reflectivity of the surface. They understand that even a microscopic flaw can separate $1 million coin from a common cent. This intensely precise evaluation adds a layer of drama to the process. It makes the journey from ordinary coin to extraordinary treasure feel almost like a miracle. Collectors often describe the thrill of finding a perfect coin as electrifying, like discovering hidden treasure in plain sight. This thrill is what keeps them searching. They comb through rolls, boxes, jars, and old collections because they know that even though the odds are slim, they are never impossible. Somewhere out there, in someone's possession, sits the next record-breaking 1981 cent, waiting to be recognized. And this uncertainty, this endless potential, fuels a global passion for collecting. It transforms ordinary people into treasure hunters, historians, researchers, archivists, and guardians of the past. What makes the 1981 cent especially significant is how it marks the end of an era. For more than 70 years, Lincoln cents were made almost entirely of copper. When that tradition ended after 1981, the identity of the penny changed forever. The switch to zinc wasn't just a technical adjustment, it was a cultural shift. People immediately noticed that newer pennies felt lighter, sounded different when dropped, and wore out faster. Over time, these differences deepened the love collectors had for the older copper cents. They became symbols of durability, strength, and authenticity. And the 1981 cent, being one of the last to carry this legacy, became a treasure of nostalgia, linking millions of people to a time when coins felt more substantial and the Handy families passed down copper pennies from generation to generation, sometimes without realizing their value. A jar carried from one home to another, saved by a parent or grandparent, suddenly becomes a source of discovery when someone opens it decades later. Inside might be a 1981 cent with full luster, a clean surface, and remarkably sharp details, something worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Stories like these give the 1981 cent a human connection that goes beyond economics. It becomes a symbol of memory, inheritance, and continuity, and this emotional dimension expands when you consider the global fascination with American coins. The 1981 cent is collected not only in the United States but across the world. People in countries thousands of miles away admire the design, the history, and the symbolism. They view the coin as a representation of American heritage and stability. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln carries universal recognition, embodying ideals of leadership, courage, and integrity. The Lincoln Memorial reflects architecture, history, and deeper ideals connected to unity and freedom. For this reason, the 1981 1-cent coin holds international appeal, bringing even more attention to high-quality examples. Then there is the artistic craftsmanship, every detail engraved by skilled artists who dedicated themselves to transforming currency into miniature works of art. The lines of Lincoln's face, the curves of the lettering, the symmetry of the memorial all reflect human creativity and precision. When seen in flawless condition, these details become breathtaking. Light glides across the coin like water across polished stone, revealing the masterful blending of texture and reflection. This artistic beauty elevates the coin beyond mere currency, giving collectors a physical object they can appreciate visually, historically, and emotionally, and the deeper you look into the coin story, the more profound it becomes. Coins are often described as silent witnesses, and the 1981 cent is no exception. It has seen 4 decades of change, political, technological, social, and yet it remains unchanged in physical form. It has experienced the rise of the digital age, the disappearance of cash in many sectors, the evolution of consumer habits, and the shift toward electronic payments. Yet the penny continues to exist, reminding people of the analog world, the tactile nature of money, and the enduring importance of physical tokens of value. This connection to history is one of the main reasons collectors search for rare pennies today. They understand that while the world moves faster every year, certain objects preserve the quiet essence of the past. And the 1981 penny, especially in pristine form, is one of those objects. It stands as a testament to moments long gone, to hands that once held it, to mint workers who produced it, and to collectors who now cherish it. This is why its value continues to rise. Not because of the metal, but because of the meaning. And as the journey of exploring the 1981 1-cent coin continues unfolding like a never-ending river of history and mystery, the deeper meaning of this tiny copper artifact becomes even more pronounced, as if each new detail reveals not just facts about a coin, but truths about time, people, and the quiet ways in which the past leaves its fingerprints on the present. Because somewhere between the minting presses of 1981 and the hands that hold these coins today lies a story so expansive, so unexpectedly profound, that even collectors who have studied coins for decades often find themselves surprised by the emotional depth contained in such a small, simple object. And the more you think about the 1981 cent, the more you realize that what makes it valuable is not just rarity or metal or grade, it's what it represents in the long arc of human experience. When you imagine the year 1981, you can picture a world both familiar and distant. It was a year when technology was evolving but not yet dominating, when people still carried coins and bills everywhere, when pocket change mattered, and when the American economy was shifting in ways that would shape generations to come. Parents gave children pennies for treats, cashiers handed out change by the handful, and coins went through thousands of hands long before ever being noticed, collected, or preserved. Millions of 1981 pennies lived these ordinary lives, rolling across counters, clinking in glass jars, rattling in pockets, tucked into coin trays in old cars, dropped between couch cushions, or saved absent-mindedly in little piles next to telephones. These moments give each coin its own invisible biography, a small trace of humanity engraved into its journey, and amid the billions of these coins that have faded into circulation, worn down by time, there exist the rare survivors, the untouched gems that somehow evaded the chaos of everyday use. When collectors hold one of these pristine examples, it feels almost magical, as though they're touching a moment frozen in time. A coin like this never brushed against another surface, never rubbed against other coins, never endured sunlight or humidity or friction. It remained shielded, protected, preserved in a state of perfect beauty for decades. These flawless pieces are the ones that eventually rise to astonishing values, reaching heights no one in 1981 could have imagined. The idea that one of these coins can achieve a valuation of $123,900 million in the most extraordinary conditions adds a sense of mythic wonder to the hobby, turning humble pennies into symbols of possibility. But behind this possibility lies the meticulous science of coin grading. Imagine a specialist at PCGS or NGC sitting at a desk, examining the 1981 cent under powerful lighting and magnification. They turn the coin slowly, allowing the light to dance across the surface, searching for any imperfection, tiny scratches, faint rubs, subtle marks, specks, or imperfections invisible to the naked eye. They analyze the luster, checking whether it flows evenly in a radiant cartwheel effect. They examine the sharpness of every design detail: Lincoln's hair, jawline, coat, the lettering, the date, the mint mark, the smoothness of the fields, the reflectivity of the surface. They understand that even a microscopic flaw can separate a $1 million coin from a common cent. This intensely precise evaluation adds a layer of drama to the process. It makes the journey from ordinary coin to extraordinary treasure feel almost like a miracle. Collectors often describe the thrill of finding a perfect coin as electrifying, like discovering hidden treasure in plain sight. This thrill is what keeps them searching. They comb through rolls, boxes, jars, and old collections because they know that even though the odds are slim, they are never impossible. Somewhere out there, in someone's possession, sits the next record-breaking 1981 cent, waiting to be recognized. And this uncertainty, this endless potential, fuels a global passion for collecting. It transforms ordinary people into treasure hunters, historians, researchers, archivists, and guardians of the past. What makes the 1981 cent especially significant is how it marks the end of an era. For more than 70 years, Lincoln cents were made almost entirely of copper. When that tradition ended after 1981, the identity of the penny changed forever. The switch to zinc wasn't just a technical adjustment, it was a cultural shift. People immediately noticed that newer pennies felt lighter, sounded different when dropped, and wore out faster. Over time, these differences deepened the love collectors had for the older copper cents. They became symbols of durability, strength, and authenticity. And the 1981 cent, being one of the last to carry this legacy, became a treasure of nostalgia, linking millions of people to a time when coins felt more substantial in the Haney families passed down copper pennies from generation to generation, sometimes without realizing their value. A jar carried from one home to another, saved by a parent or grandparent, suddenly becomes a source of discovery when someone opens it decades later. Inside might be a 1981 cent with full luster, a clean surface, and remarkably sharp details, something worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Stories like these give the 1981 cent a human connection that goes beyond economics. It becomes a symbol of memory, inheritance, and continuity, and this emotional dimension expands when you consider the global fascination with American coins. The 1981 cent is collected not only in the United States but across the world. People in countries thousands of miles away admire the design, the history, and the symbolism. They view the coin as a representation of American heritage and stability. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln carries universal recognition, embodying ideals of leadership, courage, and integrity. The Lincoln Memorial reflects architecture, history, and deeper ideals connected to unity and freedom. For this reason, the 1981 1-cent coin holds international appeal, bringing even more attention to high-quality examples. Then there is the artistic craftsmanship, every detail engraved by skilled artists who dedicated themselves to transforming currency into miniature works of art. The lines of Lincoln's face, the curves of the lettering, the symmetry of the memorial all reflect human creativity and precision. When seen in flawless condition, these details become breathtaking. Light glides across the coin like water across polished stone, revealing the masterful blending of texture and reflection. This artistic beauty elevates the coin beyond mere currency, giving collectors a physical object they can appreciate visually, historically, and emotionally, and the deeper you look into the coin story, the more profound it becomes. Coins are often described as silent witnesses, and the 1981 cent is no exception. It has seen 4 decades of change, political, technological, social, and yet it remains unchanged in physical form. It has experienced the rise of the digital age, the disappearance of cash in many sectors, the evolution of consumer habits, and the shift toward electronic payments. Yet the penny continues to exist, reminding people of the analog world, the tactile nature of money, and the enduring importance of physical tokens of value. This connection to history is one of the main reasons collectors search for rare pennies today. They understand that while the world moves faster every year, certain objects preserve the quiet essence of the past. And the 1981 penny, especially in pristine form, is one of those objects. It stands as a testament to moments long gone, to hands that once held it, to mint workers who produced it, and to collectors who now cherish it. This is why its value continues to rise. Not because of the metal, but because of the meaning.